attention to the cash budget now. So the budget divided in two. All the receipts are recorded at the top. So if you look at your budget, you can see that all the expected receipts is at the top, and then all the expected payments is just below it. So the figures that must go under the cash receipts is any cash that you receive in the business that is deposited into your bank account. So the actual amount that goes into the bank that was deposited either by you or someone else. So that could be for cash sales, cash services rendered, when the debtors pay their accounts, when you obtain a loan, when a fixed deposit matured, so they're paying the money back into your account, the capital that the owner can contribute, and any other income like rent income, interest that you can receive will all go in the cash receipts. And it's the actual amount that you received, either for assets, a liability because you obtain a loan, income or expenses. Then in the cash payments section, you will show all the cash that's paid out of your bank account for that specific period. So what you think they will pay out, cash paid out of the bank. So it's purchases, for instance, of trading stock or fixed assets. You can pay your creditors, or you can pay a loan, the installment on the loan, any expenses that you pay, the actual amount that you pay. So if you pay more, you will show the increased amount. If you pay less, you will show the reduced amount that you paid. When you want to invest more money in a fixed deposit, when the owner takes cash for himself. So when we want to prepare the cash budget, it is a formal plan that you make in writing to determine what you expect to do in the future, either for the next 3 months, 6 months, or 12 months. So you will first of all list all your cash receipts, then you will list all your cash payments. So it's that all the money that you receive or all the money that you pay. Then you will add up the total receipts from cash sales to the last one, and you will add up your cash payments. Okay. Then we will compare the actual cash receipts and payments to determine if there's a surplus or a deficit. So I will take this receipts figure and I will subtract the payments. If my receipts are more than my payments, then it will be a surplus. So I've got more money in the bank. I didn't take everything out. If my payments are more than my receipts, then I will have a shortfall because I don't have enough money to pay for all of that. And then we will look what was our opening balance the end of November, and we will fill in that opening balance, add or subtract the surplus or shortfall, and calculate what is new bank balance. And that bank balance will then be the opening balance the beginning of the next month. Okay, so if we look at this cash budget, we can, I'm just going to write down figures that I think out because I want to explain to you. So say for instance my cash sales is for instance 100,000. So I expect my budgeted figure that I want for December is 100,000. I hope that I will get 60,000 from my debtors. The rent income will be 2,000. And the interest on fixed deposit will be 1,000. So that means the total receipts will be 163,000. That's what I budget for December. Okay, for the payments, I think the cash payments for goods that I purchase for cash will be 40,000. I expect that I will pay 70,000 to creditors that my telephone, for instance, I budget for 2,000 Rand a month. For the vehicle expenses, I budget 3,000 Rand a month. For rent, I budget 8,000 Rand per month. And for salaries, I budget 40,000. And for other expenses, 10,000. Okay, then I add up all these expected expenses and I say my total money that I'm going to pay out during December according to my budget is 173, and I only expect to get in 163. My opening balance was 110,000. Now, the receipts are less than the money that we expect to pay out, so it means that I've got a shortfall of 10,000 Rand. I'm taking more money out of the bank than I put into the bank, and that means that shortfall takes some of this money that we had in the bank, and then my closing balance will be 100,000. That closing balance will be the opening balance for January. Okay, now that is what we budgeted for this time. And then I go at the end of December. Remember, the budget is drawn up at the beginning of the period. At the end of December, I go and I look how much money did we actually get for the various items. And I see, although I budgeted for 100,000, I actually sold 120,000 because I had specials or promotions or Christmas gifts, and my sales actually went up. But my debtors went down a little bit. I only received 58,000 because a lot of people are on holiday, and it means that they don't pay, or they buy all Christmas presents and then they don't have money to pay for it. The rent income is actually 2,000. The interest is actually 1,000, and that gives me 181,000. Okay, so if I look at these figures, they more or less in the receipts the same as what I expected. So there's a little bit less in data, so I know I'll have to push them in January to pay more money, and I'm very happy because we sold more goods. Okay, now if I look at cash purchases, we for instance bought goods for 50,000. Now this amount increased with 10,000, so I can't immediately say, oh, this is bad because we bought more. I have to go back to sales and say, okay, I sold more goods, that's why I had to buy more goods. Okay, and my payments to my creditors was 72,000. So also because I bought goods, more goods, I had to pay creditors more money. The telephone actual figure was 4,000. Vehicle expenses was 5,000. Now here I've got a problem because the telephone doubled the amount that I budgeted for. So there can be two different scenarios. The one could be that my budget is not good. I didn't estimate the correct figure. So I made a mistake when I determined that I will budget for 2,000. The other one is that the employees use the telephone of the business excessively, and that increases the telephone accounts. So you can print out every person that works for you, their telephone bill, and you can see exactly who did they call, how long was this conversation, and according to that you can see that they make a lot of private calls, and you can force them to pay for their private calls. The vehicle expenses also increased with 2,000. Okay, that could also be because we sold more, that we had to do more deliveries, or we have to investigate. Does the guy that drives the vehicle use this vehicle for his private trips to deliver goods to friends or family, or to go and visit family and friends? or why is it so much higher than the amount that we budgeted for? The rent is 8,000. We're not paying installment on a loan. The salaries and wages was 40,000, and the other expenses was 100,000. So it means the two figures where there's really a problem is with the telephone and the vehicle expenses. So as soon as I see at the end of that month we have a problem here, we have to investigate immediately to see what caused the problem so that I can put measures in place to prevent it in the future. Okay, if I add up all my payments, it gives me 189,000. My receipts actual was 181. The payments was 189, so I was paying out more money than I received. So there's a shortfall of 8,000 rand. My opening balance was 110,000. I used 8,000 of that, so it means that I now have 102,000 rand. Okay, so that means if I take the whole budget of December into account, I see that my closing balance is actually a little bit more than I expected, and the main reason for that is because we sold more goods. Okay, then we go to February and we see what can we budget for January. And I say, okay, I know in January sales always go down because people go on holiday, they spend too much money, and then they don't have money to buy things in January. Or you can say they have to buy school clothes and school fees and things like that. So we know out of experience that we don't sell half of the amount in January that we sell in December. I also know that I'm going to collect less money from my debtors because they didn't buy a lot on credit in December because they were on holiday or because they don't have money to pay for it. So because I know, now suddenly I've got a big problem here, everything is down, the money coming in, I will go and get a loan for 300,000. So some of this 300,000 I will have to use to pay for that shortfall, but some of it will be used to buy a vehicle. Okay, then my rent income, I still budget for 2,000, and for the interest on fixed deposit, I budget for 1,000. And if I add all those together, it gives me 373,000. So that is the total amount that I actually received. Okay, then we go to our cash purchases and we budget that we will buy for 30,000. My payments to creditors, I want to pay 40,000. I still have a budget for 2,000 and have a budget for 3,000. Now, for instance, with the rent, we know that the rent is going up with 10% during January, so I budget for that increase and I say, okay, my expense for rent, the money that I will pay out will be 8,800. If I obtain that loan on the 1st of January, I will have to pay my first installment at the end of January, 30,000. The salaries and wages is much lower than the amount that I budgeted for December, because the majority of businesses employ additional staff members during December because they sell more goods, so now they need more people there to work. The other thing is a lot of businesses give bonuses to their employees in December, so the salaries in December is normally always much higher than the normal salaries, and we have to budget for that higher amount to ensure that we will have enough cash to pay out the money. Okay, my other expenses, I still budget for 100,000. So all these expenses together, payments, will give me 147,800. Okay, now I go and I say the money that I receive is 373 that I budget. The money that we will pay out is 167,800. So it means that we actually using less money than we expected. So that will be then a surplus. What I want to do here, just to make it a little bit interesting, is I'm going to say that I'm going to buy that vehicle in January for 270,000. That means this amount is then 417,800. Okay, now there's a difference. And that means that if I don't buy the vehicle, then I actually have a surplus because the money didn't go out. If I bought the vehicle, then the money that I pay out, the 417, is much more than the money that I'm going to receive. So that means that I'm going to have a shortfall of 44,800. Okay, then I go and I say, what is my closing balance? I had 100,000. I had a shortfall of 44,800. So I've got 55,200 left over. Okay, then at the end of the period, we go and we look what was the actual amount. So my cash sales is lower than I expected. That means I have to take steps immediately to try and sell more goods. So I will have specials, or 2 for the price of 1, or I have an annual sale. So for instance, Woolworths, Edgar's, all those shops always have a sale in January, February, so that they can get rid of all their old stock and to ensure they've got money to pay for the new stock. Okay, and the collections from debtors also went down. So that means it's now the second month that our debtors collection went down. So I must take steps immediately. I must contact the debtors. I must send them emails, or I must send them WhatsApps, phone them, send them a letter to make sure that they will pay. The loan, the actual amount that I received was the 300,000, and there was no rent income, and the interest on the fixed deposit is 1,000, and that gives me 355. Okay, now if there was no income for rent, I have to investigate immediately. It could be that this person just didn't pay, but I have to contact him. It could be that this person moved out of the premises he's renting, and that's why he's not paying, and we don't even know it. So as soon as there's not the correct income that you thought you're going to receive, you must investigate immediately. Okay, my cash purchases went down because my sales went down. So it means my purchases also went down. The payments to creditors, I pay 40,000, so that's correct. The telephone now went down to 3,000. So it's still 1,000 rand more than we budgeted for, but it went down from actual 4,000 to 3,000. So the steps that I've taken in December to tell staff members that they're going to pay for their telephone accounts if they use the telephone help, because it went down with 3,000. It could also be because we are much busier in December with all the extra sales and the people who buy things for Christmas and holidays, and now we don't have that excessive amount of telephone calls. Okay, the vehicle expenses is now 3,400. So it also went down because we investigated in December and then said to the person driving, you can't spend so much money on the vehicle expenses. You are using the vehicle for your private purposes. You will have to pay for it. Okay, if we look at the rent, the actual amount that we paid was 88,800. the installment on loan that we paid, and the salaries and wages and the other expenses are all in line. My other expenses decreased a little bit. That indicates that in some way I was trying to save money on expenses. Okay, so my payments is 223,200. So that means I must now take the balance that I had the previous month. So my closing balance was 55,200 at the end of January, but at the end of December it was 100,000. Okay, if I take the money received and I subtract the money that we paid out, we had a surplus of 131,800. So that means now my bank balance increased to 231,800. That means I've got a lot of money in the bank. So I must either use this money to buy more goods so that I can sell goods and make a profit, or I have to pay that loan so that I don't have to pay interest. So you can see that you will budget for every item that you pay money out. And at the end of the period, you will check the actual amounts, and if there's a difference between them, you will investigate immediately and you will take steps to prevent that in future. So that is the whole purpose of the budget, is that we make sure that we stay in the budgeted figures, and if there is something wrong, that we take action immediately. Okay, if we look at the notes on the next page, the manager or owner will actually look at these figures. They will look at this actual receipts and payments, and then they will investigate and they will take action immediately. That's what I explained to you while we did the budget. Cash budgets must recognize where there's a large inflow of money and when the inflow of money is slower. And that's why I did this budget for December and January. So we took into account that in December we're going to receive much more money than we would receive in January. And so we kept some of the money over that we can pay expenses in January. The entity will have enough cash to pay for expenses and to make arrangements with the bank for a bank overdraft or obtain a loan. So the whole purpose of the budget is, if I see according to the budget, I'm going to have a shortfall. I'm not going to be able to pay all the liabilities that I have to pay and pay all my expenses. Then it doesn't help sitting there and say, oh, I'm not going to have enough money. You have to take steps immediately and go and organize for a bank overdraft or a loan. And the manager must decide how can they increase, for instance, the income. So what else can they do? Can they buy more goods and try and sell more goods so that their income can increase? How can he reduce expenses? And that's what I did with telephone and the traveling expenses. So you have to look at all your income and expenses and always see, what can I do to increase income? What can I do to decrease expenses? The entity does not have too much money idle in the bank, because of, if they have, it means that you are actually not making money with the money that you've got available. So if we look at this amount here, the 231,000 is much too high. So they must decide immediately, what are we going to do so that we reduce this amount and we pay less interest on the loan, for instance, or we buy more goods and we make more profits. The manager will determine what is the bank balance at the end of each month, and if that bank budget is too low to pay all the expenses and liabilities, it means that he must take steps immediately to prevent problems in the month when there is not enough income to pay for all the expenses.